The stars blinked in silence. But silence was no longer a natural phenomenon. It was mandated. A month ago, the Galactic Empire transmitted a single decree on every frequency from the moons of Orion to the synthetic suns of Archeal. All planetary cultures will cease transmission. Dissent will be met with extermination. They called it the Silence Mandate. Earth called it war. The broadcast didn't come with demands. It came with a demonstration. The planet LYRR, famous for its telepathic operas and sentient crystal symphonies, vanished. No explosion. No wreckage. Just gone. One moment a civilization sang across the stars. The next, silence. Earth's United Command convened in hushed chambers beneath the Rockies, their voices trembling not with fear but fury. The Empire had always kept its bootlight just beyond the solar system, its ships scanning, watching, but never acting. Now it had moved, and Earth was never good at staying quiet. The man they summoned wasn't seated at the table. He stood at the far end of the observation bay, silhouetted against the burning horizon of Mars on the display screen. Sergeant Elias Vorn, retired dishonorably, a sniper who once ended an entire siege with a single bullet, who now preferred whiskey to orders, silence to speeches. The kind of man you only call when the war had already begun and you'd lost the first move. Admiral Reyes leaned forward, voice clipped and formal. "You know why you're here." "I'm guessing it's not to fix your comms," Elias muttered, eyes still locked on the stars. Reyes pushed a holopad across the table. "The Empire controls a relay core. It's the source of the Silence Mandate. One central station beams suppression waves through psychotronic relays to every compliant planet. We can't break the network, but we can break the center." Elias picked up the pad. On it was a schematic of a cold, dark moon in a forgotten system. Tarsus 7, buried beneath its surface. The relay core. Stealth drop. Reyes continued. No backup. No bombs. In and out. One man. One shot. "I'm not one of your soldiers anymore," Elias said, finally turning. "No," Reyes replied. "You're the only one who doesn't listen." That earned a ghost of smirk. The next day, Elias stood on the edge of the launch platform, suit sealed, rifle magnetized his spine, and a neural AI tethered to his cortex, codename Whisper. It had been weeks since he spoke more than a sentence to anyone. Even now, as the drop pod hissed shut around him, he said nothing. The silence, at last, felt honest. The descent was long. Tarsus 7 had no welcoming committee, just frozen winds and craters deep enough to swallow mountains. The pod hit hard, shields flaring, but Elias emerged without a scratch. He didn't believe in grand entrances, just effective ones. Inside his helmet, Whisper came online with a static purr. "You really going to ignore me the whole mission?" "Thinking," Elias replied. "About what?" Elias crouched, scanning the jagged ridgeline. "About how long it takes to kill a star." Whisper paused. "You mean figuratively?" "No." He moved fast and low, phased into the snowy wasteland like a shadow. The entrance of the relay core was hidden beneath a fake crater, a clever trick that might fool satellites, but not someone who'd once crawled blind through 3 miles of Martian ash to put a bullet between 2 helmets. The hatch opened without a sound. Inside, the temperature plummeted, but Elias's suit adjusted. Lights flickered above, sterile, imperial design. A place made by beings who believed emotion was weakness and conformity was strength. It made him itch. Whisper pinged softly. 3 biosignatures ahead. All non-human. Looks like overseer drones. Empire's elite enforcers. "You want to talk plan?" "Same as always," Elias said, detaching his rifle. "Don't miss." The first drone didn't know it was dead until it fell. The second barely turned its head before its core shattered. The third raised an alarm. Elias's bullet reached it before the sound did. He moved through the halls like a vengeful thought, invisible, inevitable. The deeper he went, the quieter it got, not just in sound, but in something deeper, like the air itself refused to carry vibration. Whisper dropped to a whisper, then silence. The heart of the Empire's power didn't roar. It waited. At last, he reached the chamber. A cathedral of machines, towers of glowing sigils and silent speakers vibrating with unseen energy. And in the center, suspended in a gravity well, a being unlike anything Elias had seen. It floated, eyes closed, its form flickering between solid and light, not mechanical, not fully organic. A conduit. Whisper came back online with a sputter. That's the source. They call it an echo warden, a biological amplifier. It thinks the mandate. The system obeys. Elias raised his rifle. His finger curled. The warden opened his eyes and looked at him. Something passed between them, not words, but sensation, grief, agony, and then something deeper, a plea. Elias froze. Orders are clear, Whisper said. Destroy the core. Extract. He stared to the scope, breathing steady. But the eyes staring back weren't those of a monster. They were prisoners. He lowered the rifle. You always were bad at following rules, Whisper muttered. Elias scanned the control towers, noting the patterns, the signal flows, the pulse of the neural web holding the warden in place. The system wasn't just amplifying a message. It was suppressing a voice. One voice. And through it, the entire galaxy. His fingers danced across the console. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he knew what he wanted. To make them hear. The machine groaned. Lights blinked red. The pulse changed. The suppression wave cracked for the first time in decades. Back on Earth, in a dusty bunker beneath rubble, a radio hissed and played the first note of an old jazz song. Elias watched the chaos unfold in the display. Sirens screamed. Systems crashed. Somewhere, an Empire admiral choked on his perfectly calibrated tea. Whisper whistled. Congratulations. You just woke up the whole galaxy. I didn't come here to whisper, Elias said. He picked up his rifle and turned toward the shadows behind the core. More footsteps. Reinforcements. It didn't matter. They could send silence. He was the sound that answered back. The cold air clung to him as Elias melted into the shadows, his rifle a seamless extension of his will. The alarms howled in stuttering pulses now, wounded creatures crying for help that would come too late. The relay corps' command was broken, yet the Empire would not let it fall without a fight. Whisper crackled inside his helmet, processing threat vectors. Multiple heat signatures inbound. Heavy infantry. 10 minutes, maybe less. Elias moved, fast and silent, weaving between the skeletal towers of the data forest. His boots barely kissed the frostlick floor. He knew the Empire's response times. Trained on 1,000 battlefields across 1,000 enslaved worlds, their soldiers were predictable, overconfident, mechanical. He was not. He paused by a maintenance shaft, breathing in shallow, measured gulps. His heart didn't pound. It whispered. His blood was ice. Somewhere deep inside him, a voice, older than any command structure, older even than the Empire, whispered too, survive. At the far side of the chamber, a bulkhead groaned open. A squad of armored figures spilled through, weapons scanning, visors burning with infrared light. Elias saw the one leading, a hulking brute in black composite armor, marked with the Empire's sigil, a shattered sun. Whisper murmured, Commander class. Careful. Elias tightened his grip on the rifle and ghosted higher into the steel lattice. From the ceiling beams, he watched the squad fan out, methodical but rigid. They were trained to fight armies, to subdue planetary militias, not to hunt a man who had spent his life fighting from the dark. One by one, they fell. A silent shot through a visor, a blade whispering across a throat. A trap sprung with surgical cruelty. Elias dismantled the squad with such eerie grace that Whisper didn't bother commenting. It was work. Brutal, precise, necessary. Only the commander remained. The brute turned, bellowing a challenge that shook the very beams above. A plasma axe unfolded from his gauntlet, humming with killing light. Elias didn't hesitate. He dropped behind the giant, planting 2 rounds into the weak joint at the neck. The armor absorbed the first shot, but not the second. The brute staggered, axe swinging wildly. Elias sidestepped calm, clinical. Another shot, this time to the hip actuator. The commander crashed down on one knee. The sniper approached slowly, the final bullet chamber with a sharp click. The Empire had built giants. Elias made them kneel. When the last echo of violence faded, he stood alone among the fallen. His breathing didn't quicken. No adrenaline buzzed in his veins. Only the familiar, hollow ache of another necessary slaughter. Whisper sighed. I miss when missions had exfiltration plans. Nothing's changed, Elias said, scanning the corridor beyond. We still leave. Through what? A reinforced battalion and an angry fleet. Elias's lips twitched. Details. He pushed deeper into the Corps' bowels, descending through maintenance shafts and forgotten engineering levels. The Empire had built this place to endure rebellions, sieges, natural disasters. They hadn't built it to survive one man determined enough to become a disaster. At every turn, he saw signs of hasty lockdowns, barricaded corridors, sealed airlocks. But it wasn't enough. He found emergency access tunnels, a spiderweb of forgotten escape routes, and moved like a whisper of death through their dark veins. Minutes blurred. His mind narrowed. Mission parameters flashed across his vision. Primary objective completed. Secondary, survival. He cared little for survival on paper. What mattered was ensuring the signal had spread far enough. That Earth's voice, fractured in silence for too long, had reached alien ears across the stars. Halfway to the outer rim, Whisper chirped, picking up irregularities. Elias slowed, rifle raised. Ahead, a faint shimmer twisted the air, an energy field delicate but lethal. A trip mine array, tuned to detect biosignatures and erase them. He crouched, analyzing the pattern. We could disable it, Whisper said, but it'll take time. No time, Elias replied. He studied the field for a heartbeat, then took 3 steps back. Drawing a compact emitter from his belt, he calibrated its pulse and tossed it toward the array. The device burst midair, casting out a bubble of static that briefly destabilized the sensors. A gap. Elias sprinted through it, rolling low, feeling the deadly heat brush the back of his neck before the field snapped whole again. Whisper whistled. You've been spending too much time with death. Feels mutual, Elias muttered. Beyond the trap, the emergency hangar loomed. Dark, silent, but not empty. A handful of sleek skimmers waited in cold storage, their surfaces coated in frost. Above them, the docking bay's exit hatch shimmered under an invisible shield. Escape was within reach, but so was a new choice. Whisper said, voice low, you could leave now. Mission accomplished. No one would blame you. Elias hesitated, rifle at his side, but his gaze drifted back the way he came, toward the core, toward the Echo Warden still shackled within its cage. He knew he'd broken a mandate, but he hadn't shattered the system that built it. That being was still imprisoned, still forced to scream silence across the void. 1,000 instincts, military training, self-preservation, even reason, urged him to flee. But another voice, older and angrier, whispered different counsel. Elias strapped himself into nearer skimmer, activated its launch sequence, and angled its course not outward towards safety, but inward, deeper into Tarsus Seven's hidden veins, toward the real heart of the Empire's crime. Whisper sighed. I take it back. You're not bad at following orders. You just don't believe in them. Elias smirked, eyes cold and steady. They believe in silence. The skimmer roared to life, plunging into the dark. I believe in noise. The tunnel narrowed as the skimmer descended, its thrusters humming softly against the dark. Elias kept one hand on the controls, the other resting on his rifle. The deeper he went, the more unnatural the environment became. Walls shifted from alloy to a strange, semi-organic lattice, pulsing faintly like the veins of a living world. The Empire hadn't just built its relay core here. It had grown something ancient and ugly around it. Whisper's voice echoed through his mind, quiet and tight. Bioarchitecture. Old tech. Not human. Not even Imperial standard. Elias didn't answer. His eyes scanned ahead, where the map ended and uncertainty began. The tunnel spat him out into a cavern unlike anything above. It stretched for miles in all directions, a hollow cathedral lit by suspended orbs that pulsed in rhythmic sequence. Suspended at its center was a warden, no longer bound in a machine pod, but adrift in a column of living circuitry, its arms spread, head bowed. Glowing threads ran from its spine into walls. The source of the silence. Elias stepped from the skimmer, his boots crunching on a floor that was both metal and bone. The warden looked up. No words passed. No sound at all. But the connection was instant, psychic and raw. Memory bled across the space between them. Not his, but the warden's. He saw flashes. A lush world torn apart by Empire dreadships, an ancient race silenced mid-song, and one survivor chained in his pit to scream in forced silence across the stars. Not a weapon. A witness. Whisper spoke, hesitant. It's been broadcasting pain. Not just suppression. That's the waveform signature. That's why it stuck. The signal isn't just data, it's emotion. Elias lowered his weapon. Then we don't just shut it down. No. You free it. The warden floated closer, the threads binding it tightening as if aware of his intent. A siren began to rise in the distance. Something in the base had noticed the irregularity, and response forces were undoubtedly moving. He approached the central console, scanning its alien interface. It wasn't buttons or panels. It was neural, interactive through thought, emotion, perhaps even memory. Not built for humans. But Elias wasn't a man who needed permission. He reached out. The console reacted, flaring with light, then pain. The moment he touched it, the system pierced his thoughts, flashing every loss, every failure, every brutal moment he'd buried, the friends he couldn't save, the silence after the battlefields, the cold metals in cold hands, the price of being the one who lived. The system recoiled from him. Elias gritted his teeth and pressed harder. I don't want your secrets, he growled. Just your chains. The threads flared with resistance. Try and hold the warden in place. A psychic scream rippled through the air. Nothing audible, but enough to shake the walls. The warden arched in pain. Whisper shouted in his mind. You're destabilizing the waveform. If you keep pushing, it ends now. Elias fired, not at the warden, but at the bindings, the conduits feeding energy into the restraint system. The bullets were kinetic, not plasma, old school, simple, brutal, but effective. The first snapped a thread. The second sent sparks flying. The third cut something vital, and the entire chamber shuddered as if waking from a nightmare. The warden collapsed midair, no longer suspended, its body falling like a marionette with severed strings. Elias was there before it hit the ground, catching the limp form in his arms. It was lighter than he expected. Smaller. Fragile. Is it alive? Whisper asked. I think so. The ground trembled again, not from psychic backlash. This was Boots. Ships. The Empire was descending with fire. He looked down at the warden. Its eyes flickered open. This time it spoke, not aloud, but into his mind, gentle and clear. Thank you, Elias Vorn. Your voice will carry. He blinked. How do you know my name? But it had already closed its eyes again. The chamber's walls began to distort. Without the warden stabilizing the psychotronic field, the energy matrix was collapsing. He didn't have long. Whisper flared. If we're staying, we die here. Now would be a very smart time to listen to me. Elias smiled grimly. I don't do that. He lifted the warden, cradling across his shoulder, and sprinted back to the skimmer. The path was disintegrating around him, walls warping, gravity pulsing in irregular waves, the structure dying like a severed limb. Behind him, through the dying air, the sound of armored feet echoed. The Empire's elite were closing in. Elias didn't look back. He threw himself into the skimmer's seat, secured the warden beside him, and ignited the thrusters. The engine screamed, a raw, mechanical defiance that suited him fine. The skimmer shot forward, riding a collapsing tunnel that threatened to crush it with every heartbeat. 10 seconds until we hit the outer vault, Whisper warned. They're waiting. Let them wait. Ahead, the final blast doors slammed shut. Elias didn't slow down. The skimmer hit the gates at full speed, and the emergency override punched them open milliseconds before impact. Light flooded in. Stars, freedom, possibility. Behind them, The relay core exploded, not in fire, but in song. A wave of broken silence erupted outward, the last echo of being no longer bound. And in that wave, art, music, memory, rebellion. Elias's actions had not just shattered the machine. They had freed the message trapped within it. Earth had sent a sniper. He'd become a signal. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and countless, as Elias drifted through the void in silence. The skimmer systems were fried, half its hull scorched, comms dead, fuel gone. But he had made it out, barely. Across from him, the warden stirred, no longer tethered to the Empire's psychic web. It looked smaller, more human. Its luminous eyes opened slowly, flickering with strange warmth that tugged something long forgotten in Elias's chest. Not pity, not awe, something older, recognition. Whisper's voice was thin, flickering. Signal integrity compromised. Backup systems functional. Just, you really don't know how to almost die, do you? I get bored easy, Elias replied, his voice rough but steady. Status. We're adrift in contested space with a half-dead ancient being, no weapons, and enough heat for maybe 3 hours. Imperial Scout drones will be here within 20. So a typical Tuesday. He leaned back, staring through the cracked canopy at the field of stars. Somewhere out there, the pulse of the Warden's liberation was still spreading, racing past the reach of the mandate, slipping between jump relays and clandestine channels. The Empire's silence had been broken. Whether anyone was listening yet, that was another question. The Warden's voice touched his thoughts again, quieter now. You are tired, Elias Vorn. I feel your weight. He didn't respond at first. He hadn't allowed himself to feel the weight. That was dangerous. The moment you acknowledged it, it could bury you. But the Warden persisted. You carry the grief of many. But you were never meant to bear it alone. Yeah, he said aloud. Tell that to the brass who sent me. Or the ones who didn't. Silence followed. Not the Empire's deadening silence, but a pause. A choice. Then the Warden shifted, its hand brushing the skimmer's controls. Light spilled from its fingers, seeping into the damaged console. The metal pulsed. Whisper gasped. What is it doing? The ship groaned. Power returned in bursts. Weak? Stuttering, but alive. The navigation systems flickered, followed by short-range thrusters. Elias stared. The Warden looked at him with eyes that held no end. You lit the fire. I can carry it further. Elias didn't argue. Instead, he nodded toward the NAV screen. Plot us someone they won't expect. Someplace broken. Angry. Ready to fight. Whisper muttered. I'm marking that under military optimism. I'm marking it as unfinished business. The Warden touched the console again, and this time a path unfolded. Not coordinates in human numbers, but an emotional resonance. Each point marked not by location, but memory, pain, injustice, places the Empire had silenced. It wasn't a course. It was a crusade. Elias exhaled slowly. He had thought the mission ended with survival, but it wasn't survival the galaxy needed. It was a voice. Broadcast status? He asked. Whisper hesitated. Whatever the Warden did, it pushed the signal into deep networks. Pirate bands. Forgotten colonies. Even dormant war AI clusters. People are hearing it. Some are scared. Others angry. Good, Elias said. Let it hurt. The Warden studied him. Then looked back out the viewport. You still don't see what you are. I'm a trigger, he said. Nothing more. No, the Warden whispered in his mind. You are the echo that follows. Movement on the sensor array cut the conversation short. Whisper flared. Drones incoming. 6. Fast. Elias reached for his rifle, only to remember he had fired the last shot in the core. It sat across his lap now. Empty, scorched, a relic of a different moment. He looked at the Warden. You still got miracles left? No miracles, it said. Just will. The drone swept in, diamond-shaped hunters armed with beam lances and sensor disruptors. The skimmer shouldn't have stood a chance. And yet, as they drew close, the Warden stood tall in the cabin. Its skin shimmered, its form shifting. No longer frail but composed of light and memory, voice in defiance. It raised its hand, and a wave of raw signal pulsed outward. Not a weapon, a truth. The drone shuddered in formation. One blinked red and self-destructed. Another turned and fled. The others froze, caught between protocol and something deeper, something human buried in machine thought. Whisper whispered, astonished. "You're rewriting them." Elias smiled grimly. "Told you, noise wins." The surviving drones drifted aside, and the skimmer, limping but free, pushed on into the stars. The Empire would come, with fleets, with assassins, with silence wrapped in steel. But now they were chasing echoes. And Elias Vorn had never been easier to find.